It had been a week since the fever. Taehyung had stayed by his side every night, silently, not overbearing, not distant, just present. And for the first time in a long time, Jungkook didn't feel like he was trying alone. Still, there was one thing he hadn't done in months. Smile. Not the polite ones. Not the ones for show. A real one. The morning air was gentle. Summer rain had passed, leaving the sky pale and washed out. Taehyung was in the garden, kneeling in the dirt, sleeves rolled, planting something new. Jungkook watched from the doorway. He didn't know what moved him, but he stepped outside quietly. Taehyung looked up, surprised. "You're out of bed. Sun feels good." Taehyung smiled. "Come here. Help me." Jungkook hesitated, then stepped barefoot into the grass. When their knees touched side by side in the dirt, it didn't feel strange. It felt safe. "What are you planting?" he asked softly. "Lavender," Taehyung said, brushing hair from his forehead. "You like the smell?" Jungkook paused. He hadn't thought Taehyung remembered. "You remember that?" "I remember a lot more than you think," Taehyung replied, digging a small hole in the earth. "I was just too wrapped up in my own head to show it." Jungkook stayed quiet. Then, without looking at him, he murmured, "Do you want to know why I never left the night you said her name?" Taehyung stopped moving. Slowly turned toward him. Jungkook pressed his hand into the dirt, grounding himself. "Because I thought maybe if I stayed long enough, you'd see me." "Really see me?" His voice cracked. "I thought love was about waiting. About being patient. About enduring." Taehyung's breath hitched. "I kept thinking, if I love you harder, louder, softer, something will change." He looked up, eyes glassy. But nothing did. Taehyung swallowed hard. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I see you now. I see every part of you I took for granted." And then, for some reason, Jungkook laughed, just a little. Broken, shaky. "Is this your redemption arc?" Taehyung blinked. Jungkook wiped his cheek. "You in dirt-stained sleeves, planting lavender to win me back." Taehyung stared for a moment. Then smiled. "That obvious, huh?" "And just like that." Jungkook smiled back. Genuinely. Small. Soft. Real. And Taehyung saw it, like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. He didn't reach for him. Didn't force anything. He just watched the man he hurt finally smile again. Like he was blooming, slowly, just like the lavender in the dirt between them. The dream was vivid. Not the good kind. It was the kind where everything looked real. The hallway, the echo of her name, the weight of being second, of being unseen. He woke up with a sharp inhale, chest heaving, damp with sweat. Darkness cloaked the room, except for the dim yellow light spilling from the bathroom. He didn't remember falling asleep on the living room couch. But what he remembered clearly was the feeling of that dream. And how real it felt when Taehyung had whispered someone else's name again. Even in his nightmares, he couldn't escape it. He pressed his hand to his chest, trying to steady his breath. But the moment his fingers trembled, Taehyung was suddenly there. Rushed from the hallway. Eyes wide. Jungkook didn't answer. Couldn't. Taehyung knelt beside the couch, his hands unsure, hovering. "Nightmare?" Jungkook just nodded. Taehyung's face softened, and without asking, he reached forward, gently, so gently, and cupped the back of Jungkook's neck, pulling his forehead against his shoulder. The embrace wasn't passionate. It wasn't romantic. It was human. Jungkook didn't know he was crying until he felt Taehyung's shirt grow damp. "You were gone," Jungkook whispered hoarsely. "And I was begging you to stay. And you still called me by her name." Taehyung's arms tightened around him. "I'm here," he murmured. "I'm not leaving. Not again. I didn't want to be someone you settled for, you wouldn't." Jungkook swallowed, shaking. "Then why did you make me feel like I was?" Taehyung went quiet. Then, slowly, he pulled back just enough to meet Jungkook's eyes. "I was afraid," he said, voice raw. "Afraid that you loved me more than I could ever deserve. That I couldn't match you. So I kept a wall up. Pretended I didn't care as much as I did. Used old pain as an excuse to not grow. And I hurt you because of it." Jungkook stared at him. He looked exhausted. And beautiful. And sincere in a way that made it even harder to hate him. "I don't need grand gestures," Jungkook whispered. "I just need to believe that when I reach for you, you won't be holding on to someone else." Taehyung cupped his cheek, thumb brushing a tear away. "I'm yours," he said quietly. "If you still want me." Silence. The kind that held the weight of 100 unsaid things. And then, Jungkook, heart racing, leaned forward, resting his forehead against Taehyung's. "I still want you," he whispered. "But I need time." Taehyung closed his eyes. Nodded. "I'll wait. As long as you need." And they stayed like that. No promises. No pressure. Just two souls trying to find their way back, one silent heartbeat at a time. The house was quiet again. Not the same aching silence that used to hang in the halls like a ghost. This silence was gentler. Like something waiting to bloom. Taehyung moved carefully through the kitchen, setting down the last of the grocery bags. He had taken the afternoon off, not for anything grand, just for something that mattered. Today was Jungkook's birthday. And for the first time in years, he wasn't going to let it pass with a cold gift or an apology masked as celebration. He wasn't going to repeat the mistakes of past birthdays, the ones where he forgot his favorite cake flavor or gave him something expensive but impersonal. Today, he was going to try. By the time Jungkook came out of his room, head damp from a shower, sweater sleeves slightly too long, the soft melody of a familiar tune drifted through the house. Jungkook paused in the hallway. That song. His breath caught. It wasn't just any song. It was the one he'd played on loop the year they first moved in together, when their love still felt like an endless summer. Taehyung used to tease him for it, saying it was too cheesy, too sentimental. But he remembered. He remembered that song. And now, it was playing in their living room. Jungkook slowly stepped inside. The lights were warm. A simple cake sat on the table, handmade, imperfect but thoughtful. Not store-bought like before. A small sticky note sat beside it. No more forgetting what matters. "Happy birthday, Kook." Jungkook stood frozen. Taehyung walked out from the kitchen, wiping his hands on a towel. He hesitated when he saw Jungkook. "I know it's not much," he said, voice soft. "But I wanted to do something, not as your husband. Just as someone who remembers who you are." Jungkook looked at him. Eyes wide. And then, quietly, like it surprised even him, he whispered, "You remembered the song?" Taehyung nodded, nervous. "I never forgot it. I just didn't know how to show you I cared about the little things. But they were never little to you. I see that now." There was a pause. Then Jungkook crossed the room slowly. And without a word, he wrapped his arms around Taehyung's waist. resting his head on his shoulder. Taehyung didn't move at first. Then his arms came up, hesitant, almost trembling, and held Jungkook close. "You always say the right things when I'm about to give up," Jungkook whispered into his chest. Taehyung's voice cracked. "That's because I never stopped loving you. I just finally learned how to love you right." The song kept playing in the background, soft, nostalgic, warm. They stood like that for a long time, wrapped in something that felt like both a beginning and an apology. The night was quiet, soft, but Jungkook's heart was anything but. The song had long stopped playing. The cake was cut, and most of it sat untouched in the fridge. Taehyung had tried to play it cool, pretending he didn't notice Jungkook barely eating, but he did. Of course he did. Because tonight, Jungkook couldn't pretend. He didn't want to. After the small celebration, Taehyung had offered to sleep on the couch. "Just in case," he said. "I don't want to make you uncomfortable," but something about it felt wrong. Because for years, they had shared a bed while feeling like strangers. Now, for the first time, Taehyung felt like Taehyung again, and yet he wasn't beside him. So Jungkook stood in the doorway, watching Taehyung shift awkwardly under a thin blanket. The man looked so out of place there, like a king in exile from his own castle. "Hyung," Jungkook finally said. Taehyung sat up immediately. "You come to bed, Apors?" "Are you sure?" "No," Jungkook smiled faintly. "But I'm sure I don't want to sleep angry anymore." Taehyung stood, almost hesitant. "I don't want you to feel pressured. I just don't want this to be a battlefield anymore." They walked side by side in silence to the bedroom. The air was heavy with unspoken things. Jungkook slipped into his side of the bed, and Taehyung quietly followed, leaving just enough space between them that it felt respectful, yet close enough to feel his warmth. The silence stretched. Then, "Do you ever think about the first time we slept like this?" Jungkook asked suddenly, eyes fixed on the ceiling. Taehyung turned his head. "At your apartment you fell asleep before I did. You were snoring within minutes." Taehyung chuckled softly. "I was so nervous. I was trying too hard to act casual. I remember thinking," Jungkook whispered, "I hope he never leaves." Taehyung reached for his hand under the blanket. Jungkook let him hold it. "I did leave," Taehyung murmured. "Emotionally, at least." "I'm sorry for that." "I know," Jungkook replied. "But you're trying. And I see that now, Apors." Then Taehyung turned to his side, facing him. "May I hold you?" Jungkook hesitated. Just for a second. Then nodded once. Taehyung gently pulled him close, arms wrapping around Jungkook like a shield, like a confession. Jungkook melted against him, breath trembling. He hadn't cried in front of him like this in months. But tonight, it wasn't grief. It was relief. Healing didn't have to be loud. Sometimes it looked like this, two broken people holding each other quietly, choosing not to let the past win. "I don't want to be the reason you stop believing in love," Taehyung whispered into his ear. "You're not," Jungkook breathed. "You're the reason I still believe it can be fixed." They fell asleep that way, tangled limbs, steady breaths, and no more distance between them. Not tonight.